I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby, here with Jessica Biel, the star and executive producer of Candy. So, just looking at your career, you haven't played that many real people before, just from what I could tell. So, how does your process change actually when you're playing someone who did exist in the world?
Yes, great question. I mean, it definitely changes. Obviously, there's a profound sensitivity that you want to try to cultivate around, these fact that these were real people's lives we're talking about. That this experience, you know, uh, splintered a community and changed two families' lives forever. And there are people still living and breathing that, have to relive these stories when we in the entertainment business, decide that we'd love to explore them again. So it's terrifying, really, right? It's a hard balance to find. And I think the process just becomes a little bit more finessed and nuanced in terms of, okay, I really am not trying to, do something funny for funny's sake. I'm not trying to create a caricature of somebody. I'm not trying to mimic anybody. Taking what I know about these humans and filling in the gaps, filling them out to become 360-degree people. Um, but with great care and compassion. Robin and I talked quite a lot about, Robin, our creator and writer, Robin Veith, talked quite a lot about how Candy will be likable and lovable. And I really thought that that was important. And I wanted to make sure that if the real Candy or anyone saw this depiction of her, whether it's true or not, I don't know if she was that way in real life, but that's the way I interpreted it. But I was hoping that no one would look at this portrayal and go, oh, they just made her some evil, awful, crazy person. That wasn't who that person was back then. So it sort of like heightens everything, and you're like putting a microscope on everything you're doing to not just be black and white about it, to really live in that gray area of a flawed and wonderful and kind and complex human being.
Hmm. Well, speaking to that, in terms of getting into the psychology of Candy and just what made her tick, what were the aspects that you keyed into that made you actually realize, like, however dark this story may be, I can play this and I understand this person?
Yes, definitely. There were some major aspects to her that I really understood and could kind of grab onto. This idea of this perfect persona, making sure everybody else felt safe and good before, your own feelings are considered. Um, the inability to communicate my needs and the resolve to say, I need this and it's okay. And my needs are just as important as anyone else's. Like all of those repressed kind of issues that she was dealing with, and the rage of maybe choosing a life that is supposed to feel enough. I mean, look at my beautiful life. Isn't this enough? That idea, like I feel like I tapped into all of those feelings. And I grew a giant set of like compassion bags for her, like I just carried these bags with me while we were doing this. Like, I get her. I understand why she's so angry and doesn't know how to access it and doesn't feel comfortable to say it to anybody. And her husband doesn't get it at all. Like, I think we all can understand on some level those things, especially being, a woman, and how things have changed quite a lot. But, we're still fighting, for a lot of things. So that was my way in with her. Definitely.
Well, I want to actually talk about the first scene, the very first scene of the show, which is this unbroken take of Candy telling a story. And it's this extended metaphor about a tree that's being cut down, but then being made into a cross, which is like a metaphor for how, God always has a plan, even if it's something you don't maybe recognize at first. Can you maybe talk about the significance of what that means in her sort of life story and how she's able to really justify certain choices in her mind?
Yeah, definitely. That was a really important sequence for the show. It was something that initially Robin told us that that was her way in when she realized, oh, she's going to tell this sort of parable, this kind of fantasy child nursery kind of Bible passage, right? Something
Mm.
almost childlike, for us to launch into this story. Once she said, I realized that that's how we needed to get in, there was no other way in. Like the pilot was going to start like that no matter what. And so for me, I'm thinking, okay, this is super important. Like we need to get this spot on so we can grab people right away. And we are sort of talking about this symbolic, she's telling you that I'm going to tell you about my life. And I'm going to tell you kind of what happened to me. And yeah, it's not my fault. The universe, God, something larger than you has a plan for you, whether you think you're going to go some way. But just you wait, you might take a whole nother path and it's not your fault, on kind of.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing about that sequence is, so we shot that first week of episode 1. And when we started to see the cuts coming in, it just wasn't working at all. My performance wasn't working. I really was like, I hate this performance. I don't get it. We cut it down. We extended it. We cut it. We changed it. We flashed back. We added stuff. We took it away. We used it just as a voiceover. We did all these different things to try to make this thing work. And Robin said, I have to have it in. I have to have it this way. And so I begged for a reshoot. Can we do this again? And it was so interesting because we didn't get to reshoot it until episode 5. So we'd gone through the whole thing, gone through the fight sequence, gone through the affair and everything in between. And not until then, not until I had actually physically and emotionally gone through the entire journey, did that monologue make any sense to me really at all. Once we went through it, and I was like, okay, I got it now. I got it now. I was able to access all of the images of everything that we had done and really tell the story in a way that was going to give you the feeling of what the show would feel like, which is strangely childlike and sort of naive and lovely and kind of delightfully fun, and then wicked, and then dark, and then strange and uncomfortable and weird, and horrible all together. And not until I had that experience could I actually do that parable justice. And it was a really amazing learning experience about, something that's super important, maybe putting it at the end of a shoot to really be able to physically go through these things. Because it was not working. And I was begging Rob's like, you have to cut this out. This is awful. Just get rid of it. And thank God we got to reshoot that.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense, that now having lived it, you do understand it.
Yes.
And I also do want to touch on, the physicality of it, where you have this wig and the oversized glasses. Because I actually spoke with Christina Ricci about Yellow Jackets the other day, and she has kind of like a similar transformation there with the hair and the glasses. And she actually mentioned that people actually started treating her differently when she was in the full hair and the makeup. So I'm curious if that was true for you as well, and also just, how much that transformation did kind of help you getting into the character?
That's so interesting. I
Mm,
love hearing people's experience with,
yeah.
complete complete transformations. I find them to be deeply, profoundly helpful in stepping into your character's shoes and looking around the world going, wow, this place looks different. When you're on set and everything is decked out to the nines, and I'm looking at my co-stars going, whoa, Pablo and Tim don't look like Pablo and Tim at all. Melanie looks different. It's like you're getting these visual cues of you're in a new space and time. So you can suspend your belief. I was able to suspend my own belief of my own life even more than normal because I looked at myself in the mirror and felt my hair, and like I didn't feel any hair on my shoulders and nothing on my neck, and like those weird little things where you're like, wow, my neck is totally exposed. And that feels different, And I looked down at myself and I looked like my grandmother, my beloved grandmother, who always wore these like pastel suits. And I thought, oh, I see Norma Jean right here, So I was completely gone from my own self on many levels, which was so helpful. I don't know if I tangibly remember people treating me differently, but I remember when I eventually what started to happen was when I would come to set for whatever reason without my wig on. Like maybe I was there early, or I was watching a different scene, or I was not working that day and I was there just to watch the setup or talk to Robin. People didn't know who I was at all. They literally, I would say, hey, morning. And they would go, morning. And watch me. And I'm like, oh, they just don't recognize me right now. Like they didn't know who I was. Somebody said, they came up to me at the end of the day and they're like, God, I thought you were a new PA. I had no idea it was you. You had a ponytail and like, you had like a sweatshirt on. Like I looked like, some like new recruit off the, it was so funny. But yeah, I just love that transformation element and hope to keep having the opportunity to do that. Most, it's just fun to see yourself in a different way.
Mhm.
That's what I love about my business, like hair and makeup department, wardrobe. That's the magic. It's the magic of this business.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned Melanie there, Melanie Linsky playing Betty.
Yeah.
And what's so striking about this show is that you really feel the pain of what she's going through emotionally as this lonely kind of person who feels isolated even from her own family and just the other women in her neighborhood. And there's that sense of dread because you know what's coming. How much did the two of you kind of talk about what Betty is going through and just like how these two women are relating to each other?
Absolutely. We talked quite a lot about it, and we were able to Zoom with Jim Atkinson, who was one of the investigative journalists and writers of the book Evidence of Love, who was able to actually speak to the surviving people in the community, Candy herself, lawyers, friends, family members, and a lot of Betty's family members as well. And that book has so much information about Betty as a young woman, as a young girl in high school, her experience, going to college, which was so unusual at that time, or at least in that part of the world, maybe. And we knew quite a lot about her. And we talked so much about, her undiagnosed possible postpartum, which, nobody was talking about back in the 80s and no one even understood. And she sort of was a hypochondriac and she would go in and out of the doctor. Things were like her tummy hurt her all the time. And then she was having migraines and she had menstrual cycle issues. And like, it just never stopped with her medical stuff. And we would just think, we would talk about how challenging that must have been, at a time where, like what we already said about Candy, all these repressed feelings and emotions and all the stuff, Betty's experiencing that. And then on top of all of it is this complete pressure cooker of, physical pain, mental exhaustion, loneliness, depression, all of this mental health, these mental health issues that are completely, no one's seeing them. No one is understanding them. And she feels like an island alone. So we really talked quite a lot about how hard that must have been for Betty. And I think Candy was experiencing all the other things and just not so much of the medical stuff, the actual physical pains and the deep, deep depressions that Betty was going through. And that was honestly, it was helpful for me too, because that was the one area where I could really say to myself, whether it's true or not, well, maybe she did threaten Candy because she was undiagnosed with all of these mental health issues and all of these physical issues. Maybe she really did come up to her with that axe and say, you stay away from him, or whatever she did. Maybe she did swing it. Who knows? Like, that helped me kind of suspend my belief again, and kind of believe that Betty had to be the aggressor. There's no way Candy would have come out of nowhere and just started swinging this axe on this woman. I have subsequently fluctuated back and forth and oscillated around what I feel is true and not true. But having those conversations, I think, were between Melanie and I are highly important for both of our processes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you obviously put a lot of thought into just the story and looked at it from every angle. And it is such a dark story, as I've talked about. But there's also, dark humor to it to kind of balance things out at times. I guess I'm just curious how taxing it was on you and whether you're able to make that switch once you were done with like a long day of shooting, and just, I guess, what the actual experience for you felt like on like a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, great question. Interestingly enough, bringing up dark humor, this show it's like wickedly demented, like kind of delightfully demented, and it sort of has that sort of Coen Brothers-esque Fargo feeling where it's funny and weird and kind of even silly, and then it's not funny at all. It just kind of dives off this cliff. And there was quite a lot of lightness to the set, And I think that really comes from like the tippity top. Like, Robin, our writer creator, is a delightfully funny human being and really uses humor to move through her own trauma and her own life. And she infused so much of that into these scripts that we were not just, lurking around the set, just like, oh, this is horrible. Like, we weren't. We were finding joy in these people's lives and having fun. Like Tim and I, when we were, with our kids in our house, there was a lot of joy there and we had fun. And it was fun doing the scenes with Melanie when we were actually friends. And, even though the baby shower was, weird and Candy was going through all of this insecurity around it, like, it was fun with all the ladies and at church and the volleyball games. There was a lot of warmth on the set. And then, of course, it got really intense very often, but I think we were all able to quickly jump out of that as much as we could and, kind of get back to a lighter vibe. And for me, I mean, I've got kids at home. I have to let it go at night. I have to come home. I have to let that stuff go and be there in the morning to make oatmeal. Have a smile on my face for them, which is a little candy, honestly, when I
This
say
little candy. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Like,
yeah.
Maybe I'm more likely than I thought.
Well, I mean, I think that's a great note to end on. Well, for those of you watching, subscribe for more interviews and go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Thank you so much, Jessica. This was great.
Thank you. So nice to talk with you.